Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Each week, people ask me questions, and the following week, I answer those questions. And every week, I get some really cool questions. This week is some interesting ones, really interesting ones. I try to do my best. I had to do a bit of research for the first question, which is from Kevin Taylor. He wrote, "Do you know of any last issue number 13 comic books?" Well, actually, there's something weird about the number 13. Not only is it considered one of those unlucky numbers, but for some reason, there's a lot of series that end in the 13th issue. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's like a artist's joke or, the creator's joke, but they like to there seems to be a lot of issues that end in just 13 issues. So examples of that would be Batman, The Long Halloween, Wolverine, the 4th series, Captain America, which I mentioned in the previous video, which is the 2nd series from 1996. Then there's Terror Inc., and that's the 1st series from 1992. Then there's Phantom, which is the 2nd series from 1989. It was only 13 issues. Funky Phantom is another title that was kind of a gold key one with this. It's actually a show I've seen when I was a kid where it's kind of ghost and they solve crimes, or mysteries, I should say. Similar to Scooby-Doo, very Scooby-Doo-ish. That's from Gold Key, 1972. And then there's Little Monsters from 2022, from Image. That was only 13 issues. Then Dead Man, the 4th series from 2006. Then there was Batman Dark Victory from 1999. Dead Man Wonderland, that's a Viz Comics, it's like a manga one, from 2014. Robin, the Son of Batman, which was 2015. Captain Victory and the Galactic Rangers, only lasted 13 issues. Crossover from Image in 2020, only lasted 13 issues. Flash, the Fastest Man Alive from 2006. Quantum Leap, the TV series, was only 13 issues in the comics, from 1991. Establishment from 2001. The Ultimates 1st and 2nd series were both only 13 issues. Quicksilver from 1997. She the series from 1997. And G.I. Joe Cobra from 2010, the 2nd series. Then the Avengers, the 2nd series. Green Goblin, that's from 1995. Star Wars Galaxy Magazine from 1994. Haywire from 1988. Filth from 2002. And Black Hammer from 2016, the 1st series. So those are all like only a small handful. Actually, I could have found more. I didn't want to go on forever, but that was a pretty long list. I'm not sure why there's so many just that end in the 13th, but there are. So usually, I think part of the reason for that is if you run a series for a year, it generally will work out to being 13 issues because the 1st issue, then a year later, would be the 13th issue. So I think that could be part of it as well. So just interesting, interesting list. I thought it was a very interesting question, actually. The next question comes from Kay Munin. How often do you seek out Platinum Age comics for your collection? What is the most undervalued Platinum Age comic in your opinion? Thanks again, as always, for your insight and answering my questions. Okay, so I have only a small handful of Platinum Age books. One of the ones that, actually, I wish I had it handy. I thought I had it handy, but one of the ones that's actually a book that I think is totally underrated and totally undervalued is Orphan Annie, which is a book from 1927. And it's a Platinum Age book. But it's a book. It's not a comic book. So I didn't bring it for that reason. But it is totally undervalued because you can pick it up for like $30, $20-30, and it's the first appearance of Little Orphan Annie, so seems like very undervalued to me. However, in the comic book form, I'm going to show you two to kind of make up for the fact that I haven't shown much. And I'm going to show you two that I think are very undervalued, and I don't have that many, but I picked these up because they were so undervalued. The first is The Funnies, and this is from 1936. It's from Dell, and it's the first appearance of Captain Easy, Alley Oop, Mud and Jeff, and Tailspin Tommy. Now, those are actually some pretty major characters. Mud and Jeff was even though you might not like Mud and Jeff, they were pretty major characters. They, you know, they actually lasted for a fairly long time, and they had their own series as well. You know, Alley Oop also was a pretty popular series for a while, and it actually featured the cover artwork by Alex Schomburg. So some really great series. This book, I'm not sure how much it costs, but I think it's around that $1,000 mark. But if you think about it, this is a Platinum Age book. It has like some major characters' first appearances. Seems very underrated, undervalued. So yeah, so that's the first one. The second one is a little bit more expensive. I think I paid a little bit more, not much more, but it's a higher grade. Is Tip Top Comics #1. And this one, I think, again, really underrated. I think it should be about 10 times more expensive just because of the sheer number of characters that make their first appearance in this book. This is probably, in my opinion, one of the most underrated Platinum Age books, just because it features a lot of characters. The main one that probably people mostly know would be Tarzan, and he's right on the cover. And the other cool thing about this book is all the characters are on the cover, which is pretty cool. So we got Tarzan, Little Abner, and I'll read some of the names. It's Tarzan, Little Abner, Fritzy Ritz, I should say, or Ritzy, Ella Cinders, Captain and the Kids, and there's a few others that make their appearances in here. They actually make, if you look at the side of the, you see a big long list of names, and a lot of those characters, this is their first appearance. So very cool book, and very key book in my opinion. And Tip Top Comics was a very long running series. So not only is it the first appearance of a whole bunch of cool characters, but you get it the first issue in a title that lasted into like several hundred or thousands. You know, it's like it's just a really long running series, and it introduced a lot of really great artists. Actually, how many issues? I think it was a couple hundred of Tip Top. And it introduced the Peanuts, you know, introduced some pretty major characters. So very important comic. Yeah, another Platinum Age, and that's Ella Cinders on the back. And you got, who he's got? Chris Rusty on the top. I don't know who I'm not really as familiar with that character, but Ella Cinders is quite famous. And the interesting thing about these early Platinum Age books, and the thing that really distinguishes the Platinum Age from the Golden Age, is that the Platinum Age really took existing characters from the strips, the comic strips, and often reprinted their stories in comic book format. That was kind of the sort of the hallmark of the Platinum Age. Whereas the Golden Age, with the first appearance of Superman, it was really about introducing new characters to comics, where these were characters that hadn't been in newsprint before, and they were now getting making their first appearances in the comics themselves. So that was a real shift in that happened in the Golden Age. The other thing is you get unique stories that would happen for the comics. So this is, you know, the difference between the Golden Age and the Platinum Age. So yeah, but it is an interesting time. A lot of the time the Platinum Age doesn't get the respect that it deserves, but some really great stuff happened in the Platinum Age. Next question comes from Eugene Laurie. Newsprint lasts about 100 years, and those comics will be turning into dust. Is anyone seriously trying to solve this problem? Also, do you collect fumetti or digest size Euro and foreign comics? So actually I do have some fumetti, digest size ones. I have a Satanic and a few others that are just digest size. You know, those ones I picked up because they have really cool covers, very sexy covers for the most part. So ones that I normally can't show, ones I can't really show on this show. Actually, they're quite buried under my Warren collection right now. For some reason, I put them at the bottom of my Warren collection. But I do have a bunch that I picked up because I thought they were pretty cool. There was actually a book, a hardcover book that I picked up recently that actually reprinted all the covers from fumetti. So it was quite a cool book. Actually, I picked it up, strangely enough, from my comic shop for free. It was really cool. Like they had this thing where it was Black Friday sale, and they offered this large hardcover book with all these fumetti covers in them for free. It was pretty cool. So I picked that up. And then I picked up the other issues because I thought it was such a cool hardcover. Now, in terms of newsprint and how to make it last, that's probably the biggest question that people kind of ponder in terms of the hobby. Because, you know, even though we might live only 100 years ourselves, and we'll turn to dust, we don't want our comics to turn to dust. We kind of want them to live beyond us. It's sort of like our children. We want them to live beyond us. And there are a few things that collectors and have done to kind of preserve comics. Well, going back to basics, putting comics in bags and boards is actually increasing the longevity of those comics. And if you look at comics like from the Mile High comic collection, some of those comics are like 80 years old, and they look brand new. Like they look brand new, and they really don't have much disintegration of the paper. And part of that was the environment that they were kept in. And so the idea is to keep your comics in a really ideal condition environment. Like right humidity, no light exposure to light, and in a very limited to air even. I know it sounds weird. How do you eliminate the air? But what you can do is by putting it in the bag and board, you're actually reducing the airflow around that comic. And another thing that you can do is get your comics graded. Now, when the grading companies when they grade comics, often they'll put in kind of like archive paper into the comic to protect it. Now, I've heard that you need to change that archive paper because it's absorbing the acids from the paper that naturally will break down the paper. They say that you got to switch it every 7 years. I don't think most people do that. So they say that you're supposed to reholster your comics every 7 years, which would be crazy if I had to do that. I have like a few thousand slabs, so it'd be really brutal. But that's what they say. It's 7 to 8 years. I don't think that's necessary, but the point is, when you slab your comics, you're doing a lot of this stuff. You're preventing moisture from getting at the comics. You're preventing that airflow that actually will cause damage to the books. The slabs themselves offer some UV protection, and that archival paper also reduces the natural damage that the paper does to itself. So all of those things will make these comics last maybe not just 100 years, but maybe 200-300 years. If you look at books, like when I was in England, I went to a bookstore, and in England it's very interesting the way that they think. It's very different than in North America. They think something that's 100 years old is pretty new. It's the way that they act. It's funny. So like new books are like from like 100 years old, but what they consider old books is like maybe 300-400 years old, and they have those kind of books. So it's really interesting that those books, those old books, haven't turned to dust. And it's partly because of the type of paper that they use compared to the comic book paper. But for the most part, it's also about the hardcover themselves. It protects the books. But you can do things that will preserve books. And the same applies to comics. And these books can last hundreds of years. So don't worry. Let future generations solve the problem 100%. But for now, your comics will be safe, at least beyond your lifespan. So, you got to do those simple things first. The other thing that you have to avoid is children mangling your comics, and any type of pest, like insects or something like that, that might chew away at your comics. So watch out for those things, and you should be fine, at least for your lifespan. So I hope you enjoyed that answer. Next question comes from Troy Evans. Troy Evans asked, I decided to do some research into manga as an investment, but discovered that most manga print runs and copies sold in the millions to tens of millions, and in some cases hundreds of millions. Researching manga YouTube channels and looking at eBay listings, I discovered that a $50 book or a $100 book is generally considered an outrageous price for manga collectors, and seems to be the ceiling for most sought after single volumes. There are exceptions to the rule. So my thought was perhaps that the only long-term investment in manga would be smaller print runs from the 80s or out-of-print manga. Vis Media, for example. Do you have any thoughts on this? And does it seem that manga could end up in the situation where one volume could have an entry level of $1,000 due to rarity? Okay, so manga is interesting, especially the way it's treated in Asia. When I was visiting Korea, they don't have manga per se. They call it manhwa. And manhwa is just manga. Really, it's literally the same thing, but it's the Korean. They don't like using Japanese terms. Basically though, they would have bookstores, like they'd have video rental stores. That's like going back a few years, and then they would have manhwa rental stores, and you could rent like these comic books fairly cheaply, like 50 cents. You know, and you get like a stack of manga or manhwa. So the point is, there was a lot of that where you could get books relatively cheaply as rental things, and people didn't really see it. And it's almost like the way people viewed comics back in the 40s. They just saw them as something you read and then you enjoy and then you pass on or share that book in the case of what they're doing. So a lot of the times, there are collectors of, series, but the perceived value is more in the story itself rather than the book, if that makes sense. So generally, yeah, they're not as valued. However, there are exceptions to that rule, obvious exceptions to that rule. One good example to illustrate a major exception to that rule is Shogun Jump. Now, Shogun Jump is a series that actually introduces many different characters, but the 1984 issue, number 51, would introduce the first Dragon Ball. And that book has pretty dramatic range of values, but generally ranges from anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000, depending on the grade, obviously. Another one that is quite good is Koro special special number 4 from 1996, which features the first appearance of Pokemon. So those two books are kind of like the major examples books that kind of don't fit that norm of a ceiling of $1,000. The Pokemon one goes for anywhere from about $2,000 to maybe $4,000 or $5,000. So it's a little less valued, but still pretty expensive book. But the point is, there are, what I would recommend, if you're going to collect manga, go for those first appearances. They might not go for crazy money, but I've even seen, like, I did a video, you have to go through back my playlist, but I did a video where I was going through all the manga and key first appearances. And when I was doing that video, I was looking at the eBay listings to see how much those manga go for. And typically, when it's a first appearance of, like, for example, like My Hero Academia or One Piece or something like those famous series, ongoing series, or I don't know, Fairy Tale or something, I don't know, some major series. Those ones can go for fairly high prices, usually like a few $100s. You know, it's not like X-Men #1 level, but still a few $100s. And I see it as a thing where manga has kind of gone beyond the Japanese border, and it's kind of broadly accepted around the world. That's why that you see those huge print runs that we were talking about. And that does create opportunity because it's really supply and demand. You know, I always think about this with comics, like, you know, Amazing Fantasy, for example, has thousands of copies on the census. It's not a rare book, but the demand is so great that it doesn't matter that it's not rare. There's enough people that want it that the value is quite high. Well, the same happens with manga. If you're going to collect that manga, though, try to make sure it's really in high grade, because generally what I've noticed, and this is a cultural thing, is in Asia, they don't throw away the books. They don't just toss them. They will generally create like little library cases with their manga. And so there's a lot of it out there, but it is read. So generally what will happen is you'll get a situation where they're, you know, they're read, they're opened up. So they do have that wear and tear of reading. So finding the copy, you know, there's maybe 1 million of them out there, but finding a high grade copy might be a challenge. And that's where there's that investment opportunity in the high grade copies. So something to be aware of. I hope that answers your question. The last question is kind of an interesting one, and it's from Niobe Comics. And this one actually I have to kind of get into a little bit. So I've been asked this question before, believe it or not. The next question is, why are your eyes so black? There's a couple things I think that are happening. One, the lighting in the room makes my eyes look more like the pupils look larger than normal. I think if you see me in person, it's not quite, my eyes don't look that black. My eyes are kind of interesting in a way. They change color seasonally. So sometimes I have very dark eyes, and sometimes I have actually quite light eyes, very light, almost green eyes. So they change color, first of all. And also, I suffered from a concussion. I still suffer from a concussion, believe it or not. And because of that, what you get is the dilation of the pupil from the concussion. So the more I sit in this room, the bigger my eyes will appear. So if you ever watch me on a live stream and it's a really long live stream and I'm staring at the light that's behind, kind of illuminating my face, well, that will actually trigger my concussion symptoms and that'll actually make my pupils become larger. So it's, you know, I suffer for you guys, basically. So yeah, so that's why my eyes, I think are as black as they seem to be. I'm not sure in real life that you would say that, but yeah. I hope that answers the question. It's a question somebody else asked me. There's a bunch of people that asked me that question, so it's kind of funny. So one person actually said I look like a manga character, so that was kind of back to that other question. So I hope you enjoy this questions and answers. Thanks for watching. If you have a question you want answered, see, I'll answer almost anything. Put it in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer the questions. Bye for now.